Let's give him one more round of applause.
My name is January 17, 1865. General Sherman South Black Family.
Sankoffing is West African for the concept of what Americans call history. It literally means reach back and get it. Today we will reach back into time and get nuggets from 1865. We will get an African-American panoramic view of the last year of the American Civil War. 1865 was the year that a proclamation finally reached Texas slaves. On June 19, 1865, or Juneteenth, is when finally the words "all slaves are free" officially and militarily were proclaimed. This was a time when all citizens of Texas were made aware that all slaves are free. Let us start with January 16, when General Sherman issued Special Field Order Number 15. Field Order 15 confiscated 400,000 acres of land to redistribute to newly freed black families in 30-acre segments. The land extended from Charleston, South Carolina, to St. Johns River in Florida, including 30 miles of Georgia's mainland and the Georgia Sea Islands.
Let the settlement of black families begin. I encourage freemen to join the Union Army to help sustain newly won liberty. I have designated Inspector General Rufus Saxton to police the land and work to ensure legal title of the property for new black settlers. I authorize the Army to loan mules to the newly settled farmers.
February 1865, Tanya appointed.
In February 1865, Martin Robeson Delaney became the first black major appointed to the United States Army. Delaney was brilliant, educated, and outspoken. He was accepted and admitted to Harvard. Delaney was born free in Charlestown, Virginia. He knew of his African ancestry back to the Mandingo tribe of West Africa in the territory we now call Liberia. Delaney was a physician and a publisher as well as an officer.
I am Martin Delaney. I met with President Lincoln at the White House and discussed African-American officers commanding African-American troops. I was commissioned as a major in the 104th Regiment of the United States Colored Troops. I served until the end of the war, becoming the highest-ranking African-American officer in U.S. history at that time. I later served in the Freedmen's Bureau under Otis Oscar Howard as a field officer.
Right, March 3rd, 1865, Women's Bureau was established.
March 3rd, the Freedmen's Bureau was established by Congress. The Bureau was mandated by the U.S. government to help freedmen with such issues as provisions, clothing, and fuel as being needful for immediate and temporary shelter. The Bureau was for destitute and suffering refugees, freedmen and their wives and children. The Bureau provided education, job assistance, and help to contact displaced family members. Upon completion of his duties as Union General, General Oliver O. Howard was appointed director of the Freedmen's Bureau. He would become the founder of Howard University by 1867.
I am Oliver O. Howard, and I believe that the colored man is entitled to all the rights of our common humanity, and that includes all the civil and political rights and privileges that other men enjoy. I admit that the black man differs in particular, but I deny that he is on that account to be regarded as belonging to an inferior type of humanity. I demand that he should not be excluded from business or places of amusement, schools, colleges, seminaries, or benevolent associations.
This is Martin Delaney. Hear me, freedmen, get up, form a community, get all the land you can, grow as many vegetables as you want for your families. Now on the other part of the land cultivate rice and cotton.
Monday, April the 3rd, 1865, General Weitzel and the 25th Colored Corps captured Confederate capital.
The fourth quarter of the Civil War began on April 1st, 1865, when Union forces overthrew the Confederates at the Battle of Five Forks. Union forces vanquished Confederate defensive lines at the Third Battle of Petersburg on April 2nd, as Robert E. Lee led the battered army of North Virginia West. By mid-May of 1865, General Weitzel and approximately 13,000 colored troops of the 25th Corps would accompany General Weitzel to Texas, where he joined the Army of Occupation and remained until January 8, 1866.
Hello, General Weitzel. I'm from the newspaper. Major General Weitzel, tell me about your N-words and what's been happening since you arrived here in Richmond.
Don't call my soldiers that. They are soldiers. They are astute, fit, and brave as any soldier or more. Their race is colored or military.
Yes, sir.
Now then, when we arrived, rebels in Richmond had deserted in droves. The capital of the Confederacy was in flames. On the morning of April 3rd, the men of the 25th Colored Army Corps came. We took Richmond, the Confederate capital. The 4-year goal of the Union war effort had finally been achieved. Hundreds of thousands of Union and Confederate noble and brave lives had paid in blood, tears, and lost lives. Shortly before noon, we planted the American flag to the music of the Battle Hymn of the Republic. I then had a telegraph message sent to Washington, D.C. War Department. It said, "Richmond has fallen." The next day, President Abraham Lincoln visited Richmond. As the new military governor, I took President Lincoln to the office that had been Jefferson Davis's office. Sinking down into one of Davis's easy chairs, President Lincoln simply asked for a glass of water. When I asked him about how I was to handle local residents, formal officials, and rebel troops in the conquered city, Lincoln declined to dictate specifics to me. Instead, he said, if I were in your place, I'd let them up easy, let them up easy. President Lincoln and I took a carriage ride through the city. Many white residents were sank on their knees and crying for all of their losses. But the city's blacks danced and shouted, hugging each other. Some Negroes fell to their knees to thank President Lincoln. However, the President exclaimed, "Don't kneel to me, that is not right. You must kneel to God only, and thank Him for the liberty you will afterward enjoy."
Sunday, April the 9th, 1865, the Civil War ends at Appomattox, Virginia.
General Robert E. Lee surrendered to General Ulysses S. Grant. Lieutenant Colonel Ely Parker from the Iroquois Native American tribe and adjutant to Ulysses Grant wrote most of the final draft of the Confederate surrender terms at Appomattox, Virginia. We, the undersigned prisoners of war, belonging to the Army of Northern Virginia, have been this day surrendered by General Robert E. Lee, CSA, commanding said Army to Lieutenant General U.S. Grant, commanding armies of the United States, do hereby give our solemn parole of honor that we will not hereafter serve in the armies of the Confederate States or in any military capacity whatever against the United States of America. After the surrender, Robert E. Lee approached Parker and shook his hand. He said, "I am glad to see one real American here." Parker replied, "We are all Americans."
Monday, April the 10th, 1865, Passover or Pesach.
April 10th was on the 5th night of Passover, 1865. It was also Good Friday. It was not happenstance, but providence that the Festival of Freedom, commemorating the Israelite exodus from slavery, intersected in the seasons of the Confederates' defeat in April 1865.
Friday, April 14th, 1865, Lincoln is assassinated.
President Lincoln was shot and assassinated. United States Secretary of War at the time, Edwin Stanton, said, "Now he belongs to the ages." for America and the newly emancipated African American community. The coming years would be marked by uncertainty, tragedy, and complexity. Fredrick Douglass concluded, "Verily, the work does not end with the abolition of slavery, but only begins."
May 1865, Sojourner Truth boldly confronted segregation on a horse-drawn streetcar in Washington, D.C., just 1 month before freedom came to Texas of African slaves.
In 1865, Sojourner Truth lived at the Freedmen's Village in Arlington, Virginia. After 5 miles from Washington, D.C., she worked for the National Freedmen's Relief Association, instructed and equipping people with many new skills for newly freed Americans. While there, Sojourner Truth, Alexander Augusta, Senator Charles Sumner, and others had occasion to go to D.C., where they challenged the segregated streetcar system. One day, Sojourner signaled a streetcar, but neither the conductor nor the driver noticed her. Soon, another streetcar followed. Sojourner raised her hand again, but they also turned away. Sojourner then gave 3 cries. "I want to ride, I want to ride, I want to ride." Alarm seized the passing crowd of people. Carriages on the street stood still. The car was blocked, and before it could move on, Sojourner jumped aboard. Then came a great shout from the crowd. "Hey, hey, I mean, ha, ha, ha." Sorry. She has beaten him. The angry conductor told Sojourner where to go or where he would put her out. Quietly seating herself, Sojourner informed the conductor that she was a passenger. "Go forward where the horses are, or I will throw you out," he said in a mincing voice. Sojourner told him,
I know the laws as well as you do.
the conductor tried to fortify by throw off the car.
I filed assault charges against the conductor. He was dismissed from his job. Together, we made the freedom to travel count. We fought and won the battle to desegregate public transportation in Washington, D.C. in 1865.
Saturday, May 20th, 1865, Freedom Day, Tallahassee, Florida.
May 20th, 1865, Tallahassee, Florida, Freedom Day or Emancipation Day comes. Freedom Day is an event likened to the Texan Freedmen's Celebration Juneteenth. General McCook and his men entered this capital. He entered the capital. They read and announced the Emancipation Proclamation. General McCook's announcement made freedom from slavery official and known to all in the state of Florida.
General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston on Sunday, June 18th. Sources suggested he arrived on the flagship of the flotilla, the USS Fort Jackson, with 2,000 troops. They were possibly ferried to Galveston on the USS Columbia. On June 19th, Granger announced General Orders 3, 4, and 5. General Order 3 states all slaves are free. Finally, the last 7% of approximately 4 million African slaves became African American.
Wednesday, December the 6th, 1865. The 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment was ratified and made slavery illegal in every part of the United States.
Sunday, December 24th, 1865. The Ku Klux Klan is born. Old hatreds, as the saying goes, die hard. Lincoln stated both sides read the same Bible and prayed to the same God constituting a nation divided not just by geography or interpreting the Constitution, but by the interpretation of sacred scripture itself. December 24, 1865. Ex-Confederate soldiers from a social group in Pulaski, Tennessee, called the Ku Klux Klan. And the Klan is in the hood.
All right.
So let it count, our final proclamation.
So let us be as Park, who understood the times and seasons. Let us establish Juneteenth as a time to remember the season when a paradigm shifted and African slaves became African Americans. They received liberty from 240 years of slavery in America. Let people throughout the world keep the celebration of 19th day of June yearly. For indeed, if one is chained, none are free. Let us remember the blood, sweat, and tears shed by black, white, Hispanics, and Native Americans from the African slave to become African Americans. Many nations fought for African Americans to have the right to live with dignity and freedom.
Let us lift up our heads with pride in our hands to our God, as we remember that Africa and African slaves brought substantial cultural substance to America. The American slave, with awe-inspiring fortitude for almost 250 years, produced great wealth and enlarged the gross national product of America most profoundly by God's grace. Let us remember how the last 7% of 4 million African slaves were liberated 2 months and 10 days after the end of the Civil War and became African Americans. Let us understand that this is our country, and we have done our good part to help build it to be great. Let us understand that when Juneteenth came, the new season of God's set time of favor on America came, and all Americans got the double portion.
Let us remember, preserve, and treasure our liberties, to worship our God, to enter the holy covenant of marriage, to bear our own children, to name our children, to write our history, to keep and raise our children, to educate ourselves and our children, to live as persons and not property, to freely own property, to freely fight as noble soldiers, to vote and govern, become entrepreneurs, to bring life from the good earth for pleasure and life.
Let us enter into the freedom. Let us enter into the rest of freedom to be people delivered from the bondage of being property and involved of slavery's dogmas in this month.
Let us remember this time and season, which was turned from a season of sorrow to joy, and from mourning into a good day. By the great wise and sovereign hand of God, just laws and soldiers on land and sea who did serve as covenant enforcing agents to bring liberty's light, God's great wisdom and power that caused man striving to work together and serve his will.
Let us make these days of feasting and commemorating be full of joy and song. Let us use our gift to read and write and send cards of joy for God's gift of literary victory to one another.
Finally, as we send off or reach back and get the nuggets of heritage from the past, let us make America's fight for liberty and freedom from slavery count and count and continue to count by God's grace in our noble living.